Hey guys, how you doing? So I want to share a really powerful idea with you. And it's based off a very simple question, which is what's the difference between the spiritual and the physical? Now you think the question is the answer, right? The spiritual is the spiritual, the physical is the physical. But if I were to ask you, how would you define spiritual? What would you say? Would you say that which is more lofty, the infinite, the transcendent, the ethereal, that which is Torah oriented? And what's the physical? Meaning, you can create the contrast, but to really define the spiritual is complicated because are your emotions spiritual? Is your intellect spiritual? Are your conscious experiences, meaning just consciousness, awareness, is that spiritual? Like, you can kind of just brush it away and say, no, the spiritual is the spiritual, but what is spiritual? And then what's physical? I mean, if the physical is finite, limited, well, are your emotions physical? Is your body physical? Is the physical world physical? Are mitzvahs physical? I mean, again, you start to realize these definitions are it's not even fluidity, it's just really hard to pin it down. And that's for a very good reason. Meaning within Torah thought, there's what we call a spectrum of these types of concepts. So the best way to think of the spiritual and the physical is that there are many levels of reality. And the spiritual is relative to the level underneath it, the spiritual, and the physical is relative to the level above it, the physical. But let's say there's 3 levels. So the second level is physical relative to the level above it, as in it contains the spiritual of above it, but for the level below it, that third level, that second level is the spiritual to that level. So think of it like this. Within Torah, there's levels of what's going on inside of your head, right? So there's consciousness itself, the actual self. Then there's what we'd call the realm of the intellect. And then you have your emotions. Then you have your physical actions, and you have the actual result. So that's that's a bunch of stages, right? So the Vilna Gaon explains very powerfully the ideal form of living is what we'd call to be a melech, where the mem lamed chaf, your moach, your mind, affects leiv, your emotions, your heart, and that affects kaved, which is where the blood is, and damu nefesh. It's basically your emotional reality should affect how you live. So your thoughts should affect how you feel should affect how you live, and then you basically express that into the world. So among those 3 levels, your thoughts are spiritual relative to your emotions, but your emotions are spiritual relative to your actions. So what this means essentially is that everything is spiritual and physical relative to where it lies in comparison to other things. So if you learn science, the concept of relativity is powerful, and you apply that to the realm of thought and Torah. For example, when you're learning a sugya in Torah, learning a sugya in Gemara, and you say, is this that? So you can say yes, or you can say no, or you can say somewhere in between, or you can say yes and no, you can say yes or no. You can say it depends on the situation. And then it's like you want to create this finite, no, it's this, no, it's that. But understanding relativity, understanding the complexities and the nuance of is something spiritual or physical, and it can be both, that's powerful. So are your thoughts spiritual? Well, relative to a higher level of thinking, a higher level of consciousness, it's physical. I mean, where are your thoughts coming from? Your thoughts are finite, they're limited, they're just that. They're coming from a higher level of thought. And in a deeper sense, where are your thoughts coming from? Right? In a very deep sense, your thoughts are somewhat coming from Hashem. Right? Do you know why you think what you think, how you think the way you think? So you can control a certain level, but certain levels coming from outside of you. So your thoughts are very finite relative to its source. But when you think things and you try to think about the realm of how you're going to live your life, and that affects how you feel. So if you think, I'm going to be an Avad Hashem, I'm going to be a Talmud Chacham, I'm going to work on my midos, I'm going to be someone who strives to live a life of MS and truth. So now you're taking your thoughts, and that's very spiritual relative to the way you're going to feel and act. And what this does essentially is it turns spirituality and physicality into a really spectrum-oriented concept. So your actions are spiritual relative to the result. So when you decide to do a mitzvah, the mitzvah is the encasement, right? When you shake luv, when you eat a matzah, when you count Sfiras Omer, when you do the mitzvah, that's the physical vessel. The action is the spirit that's, so to speak, expressed into the physical result. But that physical action is a physical casing for the decision to do the action. The decision came from you. So there's you, there's the decision, there's the action, there's the result. All of those stages are relative, and if you stop creating this binary dichotomy of spiritual and physical, but realize there's spiritual within everything, there's physical within everything, you also start to appreciate the majesty, the beauty, and the depth of everything, especially the physical world. There's a reason why almost all the mitzvahs are physical actions. You can count on your hand the number of spiritual and mental mitzvahs. Right? Believe in Hashem, don't serve idolatry, don't be jealous, and even that, according to many of the Rishonim, you have to express that in a physical action of taking the object. Why are we such a physical people? Because the way to live a spiritual life is manifest in a physical world by realizing the physical is spiritual as well. And that's one of the most important concepts that can be so easily misunderstood. But when you understand the relativity of spirituality, that spirituality is a level of abstractness, truth, sophistication, oneness, and source relative to the next level of expression down, and that recognizing every expression and rooting it back to its source is how you trace expression back to its source, trace physical back to spiritual. That's how you learn how to think spiritually. And that's how you learn how to think in depth when it comes to a sugi in Torah. There's a reason why whenever you learn any topic in Torah, the first thing you want to do is look for a Torah source. Why? Everything in life is sourcing things back to the root. And sourcing things back to the root is taking something which is more physical and rooting it back into something more spiritual so that you understand the relativity. And you take that and you source it back to something more root, more fundamental. And the more expressed you get, it's fine as long as you can keep a sense of the rhythm and the so to speak, the flow of expression. Because if you have a million details and you don't understand how they source back to the root, you have chaos. But if you have a fundamental root and you see the expression, when you have a million details, it's a beautiful painting, right? You see the harmony. That's the complexity and beauty of Torah is that everything is connected to everything. And when you see everything as just decompartmentalized and fragmented and just a bunch of random details, it's overwhelming and you don't want to embrace the details and the complexity. But when you understand how simple oneness becomes expressed into a realm of multiplicity and two-ness and kind of the expression that could be chaos, but when organized and harmonized, it's beauty, then you start to see the oneness of physical and spiritual, the oneness of source and expression. And then you can learn all of halacha and source it back to the Gemara. You can learn all of Gemara and source it back to root klalim, root principles, as Ramchal explains. So this is obviously a very deep yesod, a very deep concept that some of you might not really understand, but anyone who has kind of grappled with this type of question and learning in depth versus learning b'kiyas, and learning concepts versus learning details and halachos, and kind of like focusing on where does spiritual and physical begin, and vice versa, the truth is realizing that kind of flow, and realizing the interconnectedness, and realizing that to live a deeply spiritual life is to understand the spirituality within everything. And to do that well means to kind of give yourself permission to really see the truth in every layer, and to kind of allow that beautiful flow to go. And that's what the Vilna Gaon explains, is to live as a melech, and to live as an Avodat Hashem, and to kind of tap into a higher reality and allow it to flow down and then go back up. It's like, are we supposed to go up to Hashem or bring Hashem down here? Are we supposed to connect to the infinite or bring the infinite down to the finite? The answer is both. And it's not one or the other. It's like, does the Kohen connect us to Hashem or connect Hashem to us? Connect Hashem to us? Is the Kohen a shlich for Hashem or shlich for us? And the answer is, according to Chazal, both. And that's the beauty of this concept. And if you don't already think like this, this will take time to absorb, digest, and consider. But if you consider it, it changes everything. So for people who already think this way, this isn't a chiddush. For people who don't think this way and they've rejected it already, there's nothing happening. But for what we call the swing voters, right? When you're kind of like, wow, that kind of makes sense. Like, this is for you. It's to really think about how to rethink the way you think about everything. And one powerful paradigm shift of this nature can change your life. So let's say 10 people are listening and one person already kind of understood this. So this is kind of to deepen it. If you are not even considering it, like maybe in a year from now, a month from now, whenever it is, you'll reconsider. For the 1, 2, 3, 4 people who are kind of like in between and like, I never thought of this, or I kind of thought about this, or I thought I understood this. Like, this is your chance to really take your level of understanding to the next level. And I kind of can bring you to the tipping point, but it's your choice. It's your choice to give yourself permission. That's the biggest form of anava, is to give yourself permission to rethink or expand the way you think about how you think, about how you see yourself, how you see Hashem, how you see the world, how you see Torah. That's the essence of living a Torah life. So, cannot wait for you to digest, and I give you a bracha, I give myself a bracha, as every speaker should say. Just kidding, no one really appreciates that, but I really do give myself a bracha, because it's a never-ending process. We should be zocheh to tap into this concept and continuously see the spiritual within everything and deepen our perceptions endlessly as we live a life of truth in Avodas Hashem.